9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Hello dear friends, my name is Pavel Filippov and today we are once again live with SOLARGROUP, where we will be thoroughly reviewing the significant results of the company's dedicated work and our various projects over the past financial quarter. Actually, that's not all. We'll also talk about how the year went for us in the new generation airships project, because today at the office we were discussing that exactly 1 year ago, the AERONOVA team moved into the office, started their work, and now we already have some results that we can, so to speak, share with you. Before we begin, please don't ever forget that your active engagement truly means a great deal to us. If you make a concerted effort, like the video, leave a thoughtful comment, or generously share the link to this live stream with all your friends, then even more wonderful people will certainly follow us. And even more individuals will actively take part in the important projects we're diligently working on together. This always helps us a great deal indeed. Also feel free to write your questions. All questions will be collected and sent to me at the end of the stream. I will definitely answer them, so you can go ahead and submit yours now. Your question will definitely make it onto the list and I'll answer it as one of the first. Today, in addition to myself, SOLARGROUP's General Director Sergey Semyonov joins our broadcast. We'll also have an extensive report from LLC Sovelmash, where Alexander Sudarev and Dmitry Alexandrovich Duyunov will share the current status of the project, the latest news, and what to expect from it in the future. As a guest, we will also have Sergey Shevchenko, the head of the partner network. In addition, he is an investor, a partner, and someone who has been involved in the project since day one. He has a lot to share with you and will offer his perspective on what is happening in the projects, so I think that will be very interesting as well. And at the end, we'll have a Q&A session, and of course, we'll start with Sergey Semyonov. Sergey, welcome. Yes, hello. Hello, everyone. Yes, and I'd like to begin by saying that New Generation Airships is a project that was launched a year ago. A year has passed, and I'm sure there's a lot to share and some results to sum up.
Yes, dear colleagues, hello again to everyone. Now, let me clarify a little bit why, even though this isn't our very first webinar, we keep saying that we only really started just a year ago. In August, I proudly announced that we were actively creating this company, and October was the significant month when we officially moved in here to this very place where we are now, when we formed the very first core team and gradually began our important work. So, essentially, yes, a year has passed, probably since we started working, since the announcement. Right before the broadcast started, we watched that video. Of course, when you watch it and I say a year has passed, it feels like we've already lived a whole little life. I once wrote a post and also said that over the past year, if you look at it philosophically and on a grand scale, from the very moment of the idea itself, quite literally, when just a few of us sat together and nodded saying, let's go, to the moment now, when we have, more than 60 employees working at the AERONOVA office. when we have a dedicated team of designers, when we have a robust production process, when we have a significant client base, when we have concrete plans to enter the international market, when we already have a considerably larger team. Indeed, the entire situation is completely different now. And I want to thank you for being with us all this time, for supporting the project all over the world. And now I'll move on to the routine work. Yes, really to a small quarterly report when from the top management we simply, of course, we constantly hold webinars. There are always some news and videos. But now, once again, we'll go over everything together, the main points, the concise plans we set, what we accomplished. We'll talk about what was adjusted, what was postponed, why, how, and what we managed to achieve. Since this webinar is presented from Solar Group, and Solar Group is a financial company, we are currently running two significant projects, new generation airships and the LLC Sovelmash project. I'll talk about LLC Sovelmash in the second part, and now I'll tell you about the AERONOVA project. We are in the second stage out of 20. The stage is not yet fully finished. Let me remind you that our plan for this stage was and still remains $5 million. At the moment, we have successfully raised about $3 million, so we are definitely on track. What I truly want to highlight is this important point. If we carefully look at it by quarters, in the first quarter of 2025, the amount of investment we were able to secure together was $1.6 million, and in the second quarter, it was $2.2 million. The third quarter, $3,100,000. So what does this tell us? Well, from the first quarter to the third, we can see, and you can see it too, that we've grown by about 2 times. That's great. It's our first year, and of course, we started from a low base, but we're staying on track with our plans. That is, we set the amount we need, the timeframes we need, and what we will accomplish with this money. Accordingly, we are following these plans. A huge thank you to our investors, a huge thank you to our partners all over the world, and to the AERONOVA team who are implementing this project and also keeping up the pace. I think we all have something to be proud of. As for the numbers regarding investors, about 40% of our investors are still from Russia, while 60% are from other countries around the world. What stands out in this picture, especially in the new generation airships project, are the African countries and the French-speaking countries. I find this very pleasing. It shows that the project is operating on an international level and everything is going great. By the way, many people compare how many investors we have now with the previous project. Right now, about half of our investors are new, those who are involved with the airships. The other half are those who were already investors with us from LLC Sovelmash. That's regarding the numbers. Now, as for what has been accomplished and regarding orders, I mentioned that we have clients for advertising airships and they haven't gone anywhere. They're still with us. Everything is fine. We mentioned that for these clients, we are producing the second version of the airships, which we are demonstrating to them. By the way, they came to visit us in Voskresensk, saw everything, and things are moving forward there. So regarding our major clients, at the present moment, we currently have 2 significant large clients representing the vital oil and gas sectors, and they possess a truly huge number of diverse tasks. We have successfully created dedicated working groups with them, just so you can fully understand the situation. The interaction is not just a simple buy and sell. It's a program where they outline their needs, and on our side, we then propose what we can do. They approve it and then break it down into stages. Basically, a working group has been created and work is being carried out in this direction. You've probably seen it on television. There was a detailed report. All of this is an integral part of that work because everything is typically done through official press releases, like we have formally joined this process and various officials come, key decision makers, people who, let's say, are genuinely interested in making sure this gets done. Like I said, you've probably already seen all these reports on TV, so the work here is also continuously ongoing and everything is in order. Regarding the airfield, we unfortunately had to make some adjustments. We had the funds ready, selected the ideal airfield, started the transaction process, everything was going smoothly, but then several incidents unfortunately occurred at that airfield. And for some reason, for reasons completely beyond our control, the owner decided not to sell it. That's what happened, but it absolutely does not affect us. If it had happened, it would have been a big advantage for us. The fact that it didn't happen is absolutely not a problem. We immediately started considering other options, and there are suitable ones as well. But in the very near future, roughly speaking, this particular situation hasn't stopped any of our important work. We are fully and effectively using Voskresensk. We also have a very clear idea of precisely where we will continue to operate if we ultimately don't buy it. So that's the only significant thing that has changed for us. What else is some good news? I don't remember if I mentioned this or not, but in November we are moving to a brand new office. It's also located in Moscow, specifically on Leningradskoye Highway. The new office is much bigger, and we've renovated it almost entirely to perfectly suit our specific needs with our own dedicated zoning and so on. It's a bit big for us right now and perhaps even a little too spacious for our immediate operational needs, but we have quite clearly and definitively outgrown this current place. So that's the significant news about AERONOVA, a company that is continually growing and evolving. Now, moving on to discuss the next important topic, which is... Oh, should I talk about Dubai as well? Oh, right, yes. Good thing you reminded me. Yes. Honestly, lately it feels like all we've been doing is working on Dubai. So let me remind you, we plan to participate, well, actually, to attend the exhibition in Dubai. This is part of our efforts aimed at going international overall. What does going international mean? AERONOVA will become a group of companies located in different countries. There it will be actively selling its products, operating them, and also assembling them directly there, fostering a sort of local production. Of course, full-scale manufacturing won't be set up in every single country. So, as a crucial part of our search for valuable clients, strategic partners, potential investors, and generally our fundamental need for a solid base abroad, we're actively looking for a major international hub. In my opinion, one of the very best options right now is the Emirates. There are a great many connections there, indeed, many good, warm, and truly valuable relationships. And so, as a crucial part of starting this important work, we are actively participating in a significant international air show, specifically the Dubai Air Show 2025. It is scheduled to take place from November 17th to November 21st. We've meticulously set up a comprehensive booth, carefully prepared absolutely everything, so we've been diligently getting ready to participate in this major event. We had planned to showcase our equipment at the exhibition itself, but we weren't allowed to. We thought about displaying it nearby, but fortunately we have a wonderful person there who helps us with everything. He has a space where we could set it up, but most likely we won't do that either, because the overhead costs are quite significant. Plus we're experiencing a slight delay in production, so overall, I don't know, we need to look into it more closely. Basically, we're waiting for the controller boards so that they're not handmade but printed. So it just depends on the contractor when we'll get them so we can assemble everything. That's why everything was pretty tight on timing. I would have loved to do it, as I said. We even argued about this, about what people would actually see there. We'll be showing videos of how it really works. By the way, at our booth, we'll be demonstrating the remote pilot station. That's the setup where, if you've been to our office, you've seen the chair and the control screen. We'll also be demonstrating automated control via a tablet device, which we've also previously announced before. In addition, at the upcoming exhibition, we'll have an important investment session, meaning we are listed as active participants for an investment pitch in front of a live audience. There are special designated zones for this, just like there usually are for different types of presentations and demonstrations. Among other prominent companies, we will be actively participating in the significant AERONOVA presentation, specifically regarding potential investments. My primary task there is to successfully secure these crucial investments. As I've mentioned previously, this could potentially be one of the absolutely key and most vital factors overall for our success. Also, it is important to find potential new customers whose specific needs we can effectively address as a reliable contractor. And I have a significant number of important meetings scheduled with various people with whom we can certainly establish valuable partnerships. So The primary goal is not just for me or our company to simply participate in this exhibition, but rather to actively create a solid foundation, a robust platform, and essential contacts on the very basis of which we will essentially set up a new branch of our group there. That's about our comprehensive plans. The transition to the next significant stage for us will be roughly timed to coincide with the upcoming exhibition. That is to say, it will most probably be at the very end of November, because the beginning of December truly fits our schedule, both financially and in terms of overall timing. So I think that's all for the main crucial points now.
Yes, as for the main topics we discussed, that's really everything. Dubai is a very interesting subject, I agree. So, it's already been decided that AERONOVA will be an international company with offices all over the world. Yes, we've talked about this from the very beginning. Yes, it's quite interesting. Regarding LLC Sovelmash, I also wanted to discuss this with you. I know you visited Dmitry Alexandrovich Duyunov today. Tell me, what did you talk about? What did you discuss?
Trips to Dmitry Alexandrovich Duyunov before the webinar are always interesting. I arrive and say, Dmitry Alexandrovich, today I have a report webinar. What good news can I share? And he says, well, everything is going according to plan. For him, the good news is that everything is on track. There are no revolutions, nothing unexpected has happened, but perhaps not everyone is closely following the project's development. The most important thing that happened with the LLC Sovelmash project this past quarter was the official obtaining of the crucial CCR. Somehow this significant news went by without much extensive coverage, but it was something that truly didn't depend on us, but rather on a specific government agency. We patiently waited for it for a full 10 months and simply couldn't move forward with our plans without its official approval. One of the notable things is that after us, no one else has managed to obtain the CCR in the special economic zone so far. So despite this, I believe that this event was given far too little attention, considering several years of construction, almost a year spent getting all these approvals and so on. That's it. Once again, I want to congratulate and inform our respected investors who may not have known LLC Sovelmash has received the Certificate of Completion of Construction. This is very important. This is precisely what happened this quarter, and that's exactly why I'm talking about it now. Now, the main and most significant question that truly interests all investors, and us as well, as dedicated representatives of these investors. We are investors ourselves. We have carefully accumulated them, and we have openly communicated about this particular project. When will the necessary financing be fully completed, and when will we finally start making a profit? Now, let me say that everything is still going according to plan. Last time we stated that from the moment we receive the CCR, we will be able to start commercial operations, and by the time we become profitable, we will have the necessary funding. We roughly gave ourselves a year. LLC Sovelmash gave itself a year, so let me remind you once again what has been accomplished. The enterprise has been built, the facility is equipped, we have specialists, and we have customers. You could almost repeat this like a mantra. Once again, today, Dmitry Alexandrovich was boasting about new contracts, which were also shown to us. But that's just how it is with these clients. You can't talk about them. In general, everything was ready, except we didn't have the CCR. Now we have the CCR. The next step is obtaining the permit for commissioning. First, they confirm that the building has been constructed, then comes the permit for commissioning, and the status changes from an unfinished construction project to a completed construction project. As Dmitry Alexandrovich explained, this happens simultaneously. That is, the commissioning permit and the document confirming the change of status are issued at the same time. Sometimes some people try to cheat, or rather this has only started happening recently. Previously, people used to do the following. They could obtain a commissioning permit but not change the status from an unfinished construction project to a completed one in order to avoid paying taxes. Accordingly, now everything will happen at once. According to Dmitry Alexandrovich's expectations, obtaining the commissioning permit will not take as long as the CCR because, as he put it, everyone has already run out of patience with the CCR process. Here, most likely, everything will move much faster and with greater efficiency. After successfully obtaining the necessary commissioning permit, We will then need to immediately commence conducting commercial activities and clearly demonstrate a substantial profit specifically derived from this particular business activity. Subsequently, we will formally submit a comprehensive request to officially purchase the land. The land parcel situated directly under our property is currently valued at approximately 100 million Russian rubles, a significant financial consideration. According to the comprehensive agreement with the Special Economic Zone, we are indeed able to purchase it for a truly preferential, essentially symbolic amount. After that, we will meticulously appraise all these valuable assets and then carry out a thorough reorganization. Today, Dmitry Alexandrovich specifically mentioned, and I really hope for this as well, with great anticipation, that we are planning the entire reorganization for the first quarter of the year 2026. These are the latest updates, the most recent, so to speak, expectations and milestones for the Sovelmash project. But as I have said, I've shared with you what we discussed today and what I am working on. Still, probably no one can explain this better than Dmitry Alexandrovich himself, so we have prepared a report. Of course, we invited Dmitry Alexandrovich, but he said, "I'll send you a video right now." So I suggest that to get more detailed information about Sovelmash, we hear directly from Dmitry Alexandrovich himself.
Yes, indeed, we have the report. Sergey, thank you very much for the interesting information, and let's move on to the report.
Alexander, do you vividly remember, just a mere few years ago, a prominent blogger who diligently runs the highly popular and quite well-known channel In Process, filmed a comprehensive and engaging interview right here? I distinctly think over there, at that specific end. I don't quite precisely remember the exact spot.
I think it was at that end as well.
And what did this workshop look like back then?
Completely different.
That's precisely how it was. And today, as we look all around, the workshop is truly alive.
Yes.
Anyone who understands, who is involved in manufacturing or industry, will recognize these sounds. These are the sounds of working equipment, of machines. And not so long ago, this was just a dream.
Yes, and what's truly remarkable is that the equipment hasn't just been installed, but it's actually fully alive. That's indeed quite a significant new level.
It really is a completely different level now, but we actually got fined for reaching this level.
Yes, it did.
For what? For working? For working.
By the way, Dmitry Alexandrovich, I truly think that our valued investors and partners, especially the foreign ones, are very much interested in this significant question. We were indeed fined for working, on the grounds that, at least officially on paper, the entire facility hadn't been fully built yet.
No, it was built.
It was...
And the entire process of equipping it was well underway. That's the situation. But we absolutely need to separate these two distinct aspects. One is the physical aspect, the other is the essential paperwork. Physically, here it is, the actual facility itself. Yes. But on paper, well, that's a somewhat different and more complex process, because in particular, the relevant legislation in Moscow significantly changed. At the initial stage, when we were doing the pre-design work, when we were working on the project, a model was created of what we were building, what we would build, what we would see. 3D, various models were made. Remember, there were even animations. We showed them to investors, to partners. Well, here they came up with something entirely new and innovative. They decided to create a comprehensive metaverse, much like the successful initiatives seen in Seoul, for example. This ambitious project aims to allow anyone to simply put on virtual reality glasses and experience a detailed digital representation of Moscow. To achieve this vision, they drastically raised the technical requirements for the model and made us create an exceptionally high polygon model necessitating the complete redoing of everything from scratch. And since this was a brand new initiative and all the numerous newcomers who got deeply involved in this entire process, since we were truly among the very first to actually go through it, naturally, the entire significant wave of process debugging truly hit us quite hard.
The acceptance process?
Not the acceptance, but actually the development of this model, the verification of these models, because these models are no longer just design models, but ones that correspond to what has actually been built. Textures, colors, bushes, grass, trash bins, everything, absolutely everything. It all had to match the real object completely, one to one. both in the virtual world and in reality. And so all of this, the thorough verification of all these models, was carried out using scripts that unfortunately hadn't been fully debugged yet, and it all came down on us. So honestly, I deeply sympathize with everyone who got caught up in this challenging situation, as well as those who haven't quite managed to get out of this demanding process yet, and to everyone who will inevitably come after us. It's a truly tough process. Everything is done professionally.
In fact, in order to obtain the documents confirming the completion of the CCR construction, which we have shown multiple times, the main problem we faced was creating the model.
Well, it turned out that way because, for example, the fire suppression and the fire alarm system, which is indeed subject to very strict requirements, passed our inspection smoothly. There were absolutely no complaints. Ventilation, we can see it operating behind me. Here we have various essential pipeline systems running through. This particular one is supply ventilation. This next one is exhaust ventilation. This is specifically smoke removal. And finally, this is pressurization purposes. All of this successfully passed and worked exactly as originally intended. In particular, the camera is probably capturing it quite clearly. Here, you can observe a significant pipe and the comprehensive sprinkler fire suppression system. All of this crucial work was handed over with much less effort, significantly reduced time, and considerably less stress than anticipated. That also includes alleviating the nerves of our valued investors, because many people were waiting anxiously without fully understanding what was precisely happening. Well, that's precisely how we live in our constantly changing world, a world where absolutely nothing remains truly stable. Every single month, and indeed every week, there are numerous and often significant changes in regulations and requirements. Everything around us is perpetually in flux and undergoing transformation. That's why all of this took a substantial period of 11 long months. We had initially expected that by the conclusion of the year 2024, we would receive the official construction permit approval. But things didn't turn out to be so optimistic because we spent 11 months in this process, and it was all about us submitting documents. Then they start working on them, find several issues, send them back, then their scripts or something else goes wrong, and so on. Multiple submissions, returns, and resubmissions. Nevertheless, we made it through this process, and immediately after receiving approval for the architectural and urban planning solution, we literally got the certificate of completion for construction within 2 or 3 weeks.
Long awaited.
Yes.
What opportunities does this open up for us? Because not everyone understands. We got the CCR. What is that?
So what exactly is a certificate of completion for construction? Essentially, it means that our entire facility fully and completely complies with the approved project. It has been meticulously built precisely according to the detailed documentation, and it perfectly matches every aspect. Furthermore, it has both internal and external essential engineering networks, which have also been thoroughly completed and are now fully operational and functioning efficiently. The technical requirements for all these essential connections have been fully fulfilled. There are indeed signed contracts for the reliable supply of energy resources. All of this is fully compliant, and everything is currently functioning well. This is the ongoing process of completing the construction. But throughout all of this, there was another significant task, a very lengthy one, which we carefully extended with Rosrister. This was the official registration and formalization of ownership rights for the unfinished construction project. Well, it took a very, very long period of time. And now, once again, the legislation has changed somewhat in this particular regard, because some of our immediate neighbors are still actively working, and their properties are still considered unfinished construction, with ownership rights not yet formally formalized, and so on and so forth. What exactly does this ultimately lead to? It leads to the undeniable fact that if you possess an unfinished construction, you absolutely do not pay property tax. Although here we have an exemption for the duration of the contract with Technopolis. For us, on the one hand, it's not critical, but once again, they changed the legislation and regulatory acts. And now, when submitting documents to obtain permission for commissioning, we must simultaneously formalize ownership rights for the completed construction project. And all of this complex information is carefully combined together. And now, a very interesting and significant procedure is starting once again. Why is this happening? Because we are submitting all the necessary documents for the entire building project. This includes not just what perfectly matches the initial project design, but also all the required permits, all the detailed technical specifications, a substantial volume of as-built documents, and indeed a huge number of diverse documents that must be thoroughly checked. So we've successfully uploaded and submitted everything, and now they are thoroughly reviewing it, going through each and every instance. Let's say, for example, they didn't particularly like something because we are diligently working based on the specific requirements we currently know, but then they tell us to add something else entirely, and off it goes. For example, consider the cadastral plan. Now, regarding the crucial communication system, something significant has changed in the communication networks. Well, they give us a comment, we fix it, send it back, and then it moves on to the next authority internally. Again, more questions come up. These processes are natural. Everyone is going through them now, though the procedure is unpleasant, but still, yes, it's a matter of time, patience, and professionalism.
Are you talking about obtaining the permit for commissioning?
Yes, this is actually the permit for commissioning, because all of the previous stages that precede submitting the application, we have indeed already been completed.
And am I correct in understanding that the extensive documentation that needs to be meticulously prepared is handled not only by dedicated specialists from Sovelmash, but also by a whole range of other qualified employees?
No, these are cadastral engineers and professional designers. In general, these specific tasks should be handled by the technical client and the general contractor. But since their current level of qualification is significantly lower than that of the highly skilled Sovelmash specialists, and because we are genuinely interested in completing this important work as quickly and efficiently as possible, we are taking care of this entire process ourselves. Because if we had handed this crucial work over to them now, I am more than absolutely sure that we wouldn't have even agreed on the architectural and urban planning solution yet, let alone started any actual construction. Dear esteemed colleagues and valued investors, believe me, this is indeed a very interesting issue. We know precisely what we are talking about. We are fully aware of the current situation with other similar projects, other innovative solutions, and other challenging construction sites. So we are speaking not merely from hearsay, but from solid practice and extensive experience that has been diligently gained here in our vibrant Moscow. If we talk that there were 600 projects stuck, now 300 projects. I don't know the latest numbers because I no longer track how many projects are at this stage and can't move forward. The approval of the architectural and urban planning solution is a serious matter.
Basically, we are among the few who have managed to complete the stage of obtaining the completion of the construction project.
Yes, and here on this site, in Alabushevo, within the Technopolis, a number of enterprises are also currently finding themselves in this situation. Because at the last meeting, you were there too, I recall, you saw just how many enterprises and their managers were present, and they couldn't even roughly say with certainty when they would be ready or able to go through these procedures.
Well, my next important question would of course be about the precise timeline for obtaining the necessary permit for commissioning, but I fully understand that absolutely everything that truly depends on us is currently being done, and now, as they often say, the ball is clearly on the other side of the court. And how quickly we will actually be able to...
How big is that court?
What we don't know.
When we will actually get through it, of course, we truly do not know. And if it only depended solely on us, on our own efforts, if it only depended entirely on our professionalism, our dedicated expertise, well, perhaps we could indeed give a more precise estimate, but in reality, it is very far from that ideal situation. That is precisely why we do not even know many of the crucial internal documents that are absolutely required there. I think that even if the heads of those specific departments or structural divisions themselves diligently tried to submit everything, they still would not ultimately succeed. Because there are so many different departments and various services involved in this entire process. For example, we have the State Property Fund, Rosreester, the cadastral services, and also the construction supervision authorities. The necessary documents have to go through all of them, each and every one. These are indeed different departments with different managers, and each individual manager only works strictly within their own specific area of information.
Yes, and at any moment, something could go wrong.
Or the requirements could change.
Or the requirements, yes. But in that particular case, let me ask on behalf of the concerned investors, can we truly count on being among the very first to know when important information about the significant progress or the final completion of this crucial event becomes readily available?
You'll certainly find out. You'll definitely know, because I have always warned you, and it has always been the case. Whenever we received the official architectural and urban planning solution and its subsequent approval, it was promptly published on all our platforms within a mere hour. This will most certainly be done, but right now that's not even the most critically important thing. This entire procedure is currently ongoing, the process is well underway, and we fully understand what exactly to do and precisely how to do it. That's why we are absolutely not going to wait for this particular stage to be fully completed. What are we doing? We are working on the next stage, and the next stage is production, the start of manufacturing. So, we're not turning off the machines? No, they even tried to fine us for working. Well, let's not talk anymore about fines. Nevertheless, we are preparing to start production because parts are coming into the warehouse. There's the press over there. We're stamping magnetic cores and stacking them in the warehouse. Because in order to start assembly, all the parts need to be made and ready. And each and every one of them has a different production cycle. That's precisely why everything goes into storage. Only when every last essential screw, nut, and washer is truly ready can we finally start working. That's why we are diligently preparing all this now. And it's important not just to do it as quickly as humanly possible. Why do we genuinely need to do it quickly? To clearly demonstrate the volumes. This is very important indeed, and the profound significance truly lies in the crucial fact that immediately after successfully receiving the official permit for commissioning, we absolutely must promptly start producing our valuable products. And in all these various departments, they genuinely do not fully understand what a specialized design and engineering technology bureau actually is. So they frequently ask, when exactly will there be tangible products? We will certainly deliver high-quality products based on our own innovative development. No problem at all. We'll provide them, we'll commence the implementation process. And based on the comprehensive results of our financial and business activities in the quarter immediately following the official receipt of the commissioning permit, we can confidently claim that Technopolis will graciously give us a formal letter from the Property Committee, officially allowing us to purchase the land on highly preferential terms. We don't necessarily have to do this, but, excuse me for saying, I absolutely do not want to spend the investors' hard-earned money and buy the land at its full market price. I genuinely want to buy it at just 1%.
Of course, it would be much more profitable.
We simply cannot afford to be so incredibly wasteful, because even though the tax authorities eventually reacted, we still regularly and consistently claimed VAT refunds. Although, well, yes, we did indeed claim them.
Successfully?
Successfully, yes, that is correct. Why is this the case? Because nobody truly wants to willingly give that hard-earned money away. So with this in mind, we are now diligently preparing for this important matter. And we have already successfully signed some separate and distinct contracts, which represent significant decisions on which we previously used to postpone taking action. Why did we postpone these crucial decisions before? Because in the past, we honestly couldn't confidently say that we were truly able to produce the required product. Now, however, we most certainly can.
But now it's not just about signing a contract, it's about intent. This is already a specific contract.
A specific physical contract with clearly defined deadlines for product delivery. But we fully understand, and the client understands as well, that our established deadlines might shift a bit due to the prevailing conditions for acceptance, obtaining necessary approvals, and getting essential permission to put things into operation.
But isn't that unsafe and unprofitable for the client? Is there really such a high level of trust?
Yes, exactly, because they were also tracking, observing, watching, they were testing the waters, making trial products. All of this took place, so trust isn't built out of thin air. It's backed by tangible evidence. No one is chasing cranes in the sky or building castles in the air. No, everything is real, grounded, ordinary, and frankly, quite tough. And accordingly, it's also difficult.
So, in other words, those previously established memorandums of understanding aren't just signed for absolutely nothing. Can we confidently say that the significant agreements we have diligently worked on, specifically those crucial memorandums of understanding, are now truly starting to develop into something much more substantial? Or are these still entirely separate events, distinct and unconnected?
Well, it's all done step by step, one after another, because we can't do everything instantly. Let's put it this way. Right now, we have the equipment. People often ask, what more do you need? Why do you need money and so on? Yes, we have equipment, but recently, for example, we purchased a machine for cutting foamed polyethylene for packaging parts. Why is this truly necessary? It's because when a part is carefully wrapped in film, the film often gets cut and scratches frequently appear. That is quite inconvenient. Plus, it's certainly not to our advantage. We spent significant funds on this, and now we've successfully mastered it. Just before the interview, the guys were walking by carrying the first samples that had been cut, with the products placed inside this packaging. But that's not enough. You also need to put silica gel in there. And to prevent the silica gel from absorbing moisture, it needs to be dried. So, we got this little cabinet. Previously, this was in the project. Actually, no, it wasn't. And then once the box was securely closed to make absolutely sure it didn't absorb any moisture and the delicate components didn't oxidize, what exactly do you need? You definitely need heat shrink film. For that particular process, you will need a specialized tunnel oven, a dedicated machine for sealing the seams, for precisely welding the seams. You also need a machine that can accurately cut the heat shrink film to the correct size, so you can easily put the item in, completely cover it, and then effectively seal it. Do you truly need to buy it? Yes, you certainly do. Then, after stamping out the various parts, we look and clearly see that oxidation is indeed happening. What precisely needs to be done to prevent that? Naturally, you need to lower the humidity levels in the storage rooms. That means you need a reliable dehumidifier, a precise hygrometer, and not just for this particular room, and so on. For example, we ordered a die, had it made for us by the Chinese manufacturers for the engine of an angle grinder. We made it, and right now, engines based on this plate are being tested with different packages. But we also have another development. This one is for meat grinder motors. So what can we do? Should we go and look for a place to manufacture it? Or should we just make tooling for this existing die and use the same equipment to produce motors for meat grinders, coffee grinders, and so on? There's a new consumer product there. For a quadcopter, I mean.
Yes, and a portfolio of products were used.
Yes, but you absolutely need specialized tooling for that. Oh, and the tooling, just recently, we meticulously ordered a custom mold to precisely pressure cast an aluminum bearing shield for a specifically built-in motor. That's about $2.1 million. And then there are the essential dies, everything, absolutely everything. But these are truly necessary and unavoidable expenses. For example, we unfortunately didn't include this crucial item in the project budget before, but since we've already diligently completed this extensive development, it would be entirely unreasonable, indeed quite illogical, not to put it into full production here. Right?
So basically then, we still really have room to increase our capacity.
No, I absolutely would not talk about mere capacity. Instead, I would much rather discuss the overall efficiency and the remarkable ability to consistently produce high-quality products with the utmost maximum profitability and at the highest possible maximum volumes, so as to truly ensure even greater and more substantial profitability for the entire company. This is critically important because right now, every single strategic investment significantly and positively increases the company's overall earning potential. That precisely is the fundamental point here. Let's put it this way. The main framework is done, everything is in place, the equipment and dies are there, but dies and machines without tooling are useless because machines need cutters, drills, taps, milling tools, lots of instruments, vices, chucks, clamps, fixtures. All of this is necessary, and you can't do without it. And in order for us to truly start producing the necessary tooling in full, exactly as planned in the project, we need to put skilled people at the machines. But to put people at all these machines, what do we really need? Volume. And to have sufficient volume, we need tooling. And so it goes round and round in a continuous and perpetual cycle. Right now, we're in a complex situation where everything is deeply interconnected. One crucial thing depends on another. It's all intricately tied together, but it all fundamentally relies on the essential funds that are currently coming in at the moment.
Is the financial flow sufficient at this point? Are we able to utilize it in time? Or is there still a possibility for some changes here?
No, we are actively utilizing all of the available funds that come in, and by the very end of each month, we're consistently in the red. Then we immediately allocate resources from the next financial inflow. That's precisely why, for example, the overall pace of launching brand new products and expanding into new production facilities has significantly slowed down, so to speak.
So in fact, there is actually a definite need for an increase. Indeed.
There is currently a shortage, indeed a financial shortage, because some people might think, why exactly? Why is this truly necessary? We can certainly do without it. But then, let's put it this way, we unfortunately lost a considerable amount of valuable time related to the initial start and subsequent completion of construction, and now we urgently need to catch up. How precisely can we effectively catch up? The only viable way is to significantly increase the pace of product sales and accordingly ensure a greater inflow of essential funds. And for that you need to produce goods, and for that you need equipment, and for equipment you need funds. That's why right now every ruble invested leads to very serious concessions. For example, as I mentioned, we made improvements in packaging. It might seem like a small thing, but excuse me, that's about storage, product quality, and product preservation. And now here's another important issue. We made an angle grinder. It's a professional grade tool, but just supplying it, like opening the box as is usually done, won't do. It absolutely needs to be securely sealed. This acts as a crucial kind of security seal so that no one opens it or tampers with its contents. The same discerning buyer who purchases it knows that no one has tampered with it, that it's exactly as it was when it originally left the factory. And if anything happens, the buyer knows exactly whom to hold fully accountable. In fact, this significantly increases their trust in the product. Now, for example, we've successfully implemented engraving technology, developed and produced right here at Sovelmash. There's a unique serial number, which clearly indicates when this specific part was manufactured, and it's immediately registered in Moscow. By this number, we can accurately tell when the part was made, precisely who made it, and exactly when it arrived in Moscow. The entire history is tied to this number, much like a vehicle identification number or VIN number on an automobile. So, we've already reached that level. No, let me add one more thing. For example, we've acquired a vacuum installation. That too is a completely different level, as they say. Why? Because with it we can effectively work with polymerizable varnishes in significantly large volumes, which truly opens up many new possibilities for further actions and developments. Because we've specifically ordered a centrifuge. That means we can now reliably protect the delicate windings of the frontal part with soft, protective compounds based, for example, on polyurethane, as well as the sensitive printed circuit boards. This significantly increases their resistance to abrasion from various abrasive materials. Dust, especially ferromagnetic dust, can easily wear away the varnish. This is, let's say, a completely different and much higher level of protection. Hi. But this level is primarily determined by the capabilities that our technological equipment currently provides us. And if we talk about the amounts, well, basically whatever comes in now will be put to good use, and it won't go to waste. Why? Well, here's a small example. We brought in 54 tons of electrical steel. If we had bought it by the ton, it would have been one price. 54 tons is a different price altogether. There are transportation costs and other factors, but it all evens out, and with larger volumes, it's cheaper. So if before we used to buy sheets for the laser, that would be one price. In coils, the price is lower. Accordingly, the production cost goes down.
So right now, we're also stocking up on materials. Among other things, in other words, preparing for production isn't just about setting up the equipment. It's also about tools and materials.
Right now, we currently have 800 kilograms of wire in stock, and we are expecting even more wire to arrive very soon. In fact, we are also going to get new types of wire as well. On top of that, we are currently improving the essential tooling on our existing winding equipment so that we can produce a wider range of motors. This is our own tooling, and it's made right here, in-house. That's precisely why we currently have a parallel process actively going on. If we talk about how we initially started with the original hub motor, that particular hub motor subsequently evolved into a sophisticated aviation engine, but what we've truly transformed it into now is entirely like night and day. It's a completely different product altogether. This is a robust industrial product, and you can clearly see that it's a very serious and advanced technology. People say the Chinese will just copy it. Yes, they might be able to copy it, but to do that, excuse me, what do they need to do? They have to understand the entire technology, figure it all out. And then what do we have? We're developing our own controller, and what's in the controller? Our own software. So, you've made one part, but what about the other?
If someone has a very strong desire to replicate the product, they'll have to spend a certain amount of time, effort, money, and so on. But Sovelmash isn't standing still either, so this race doesn't benefit anyone. It's better to come to an agreement, especially since we're open to dialogue.
In a new way, the world is indeed better off with a good fight. Well, at times, people need to understand that very point. This happens quite regularly. So, keep a close eye on our news, on what's going on. We recently have numerous visitors now. If we used to be criticized for not actively participating in various events, now we have 2 significant events a week. Just yesterday, Igor Nikolaevich attended an important public transport forum, which included many distinguished representatives from major, influential companies. Negotiations were underway. Before that, people from various places also came to visit, and practically every day we have visits and ongoing negotiations.
Dmitry Alexandrovich, to comprehensively wrap up our insightful conversation, I'd like to end with a particularly interesting and thought-provoking question. You mentioned that engines will inevitably take over the world, that a certain significant expansion will undoubtedly happen. Well, because it's inherently profitable, there's really no logical point in arguing otherwise. As of today, has your personal confidence grown even further that all the project's ambitious objectives will be fully and successfully achieved?
In fact, there were 3 distinct projects at the very beginning. There was a clear understanding of 3 possible scenarios for precisely how this significant project could develop. When we initially started implementing it, remember people frequently asked, "Why are you building such a large building?" And what are they saying now? There's simply not enough available space. There's not enough space. Why? Because we planned it based on our capabilities. But the maximum program for the project hasn't been achieved if it hasn't been fulfilled. That's why it allows for further growth. And what's important is that now, for example, in the old facility, we used to unload 3-ton rolls, but now we can't even handle 5 tons anymore. The lifting equipment is a limiting factor. If you look, the latest equipment is getting heavier and heavier. Why? Because this equipment is meant for serial production. Previously, the mini or medium project options didn't account for this. It was only planned for a more advanced stage of the project's development, provided that people would believe in it. People genuinely believed, but I truly think we never intentionally deceived anyone, nor did we ever intend to do so. In any case, absolutely everything that happens at Sovelmash is perfectly and completely visible to everyone involved. There are comprehensive reports, thorough tax inspections, and detailed audits. And precisely how does the tax authority meticulously check us? When the entire procedure is underway, when we formally submit an application for reimbursement. They even go so far as to specifically say, "Please invite this particular employee, as we genuinely want to talk to them." Why? They are actively looking for dead souls, because the inspectors have serious doubts that people would genuinely work for such a salary. I mean, how is it truly possible, Duyunov working for that kind of pay? What is really stopping him from simply setting a higher salary? No, there are no dead souls, and they don't find them because they simply don't exist, looking for something that isn't there. Why? Because in the end, everyone will get more. Remember how in the 12 chairs, Shura Balaganov, even though he had a pile of money, still pulled out his wallet? Well, isn't that foolish, huh? So, read the classics. Thank you.
Well, dear friends, that's the latest report from Sovelmash. I truly hope you truly enjoyed the latest news. If you truly did, be sure to like and share this important video. Let me remind you that your active engagement always actively helps our projects grow and flourish, and the more active you are, the more people will follow us. Because social networks now start recommending our content not only to your friends, but also to others, and the more active you are, the sooner we will all see this project completed. Especially since there's very little left. You remember that we are now in the final stage of funding, the 20th out of 20 possible stages, and these stages are quite decisive. And on the one hand, these important events that are happening seem to be happening as a matter of course. After all, we have always talked about this ourselves. We are steadily moving according to this plan. And at this point, basically, nothing can go wrong anymore. The question of whether the project might not happen or something like that, no one has such doubts anymore. Still, each such step moves the project forward significantly and, of course, changes the state of affairs at Sovelmash and alters the risks for the investors participating in this project. Therefore, despite the undeniable fact that we are currently at the very final stage, despite the significant fact that the investment conditions now are indeed far from what they were at the initial first stage or even at the 10th stage, despite all these considerable factors, it was ultimately decided to further change them due to the compelling fact that the project has successfully reached a completely new and advanced level. And it was decided to significantly reduce the discount that we currently see, which means the shares will be sold at a higher price, and this will happen in November, that is in about 1 month from now. More specific announcements will be made in the next 1 to 2 weeks, and you will be able to clearly see how much the discount is significantly reduced, what comprehensive package, and precisely how many shares it will contain. And of course, those astute investors who choose to invest in the project at the very end of November, even then, will unfortunately not receive the exceptionally favorable investment terms that are readily available today. And in general, yes, someone who takes too long to carefully decide may not be able to invest in the Sovelmash project under any terms at all, because we have very little precious time left before Sovelmash fully and completely starts operating, begins to consistently earn a substantial profit, and will no longer require additional external funding. And this is definitely thanks to us, the investors, partners, and active people who have supported the project all this time, and who, from the very beginning, saw these opportunities and believed in them, even though there were skeptics who might have said, no, this is impossible, it's too ambitious, and nothing will come of it. Now we can see that those haters were wrong. And right now, standing next to me is the very person who believed, the person who has probably been with the project since the very beginning. Right, Sergey? When did you join the project? Do you remember the exact date? Well, I don't remember the exact date, but it was definitely in 2017. Back then, neither Sovelmash nor Solar Group had been registered yet. It was right at the very beginning. Sergey Shevchenko is a person many of you undoubtedly know, and not just because he frequently appears in our broadcasts, and not just because he is the esteemed head of the partner network, but also because he is someone who is consistently present in many online chats, diligently helps investors sort out their various questions, promptly responds to persistent haters, actively fights with them, and judiciously blocks some individuals if absolutely necessary. In general, he's kind of our secret administrator, although really everyone truly knows it's Sergey. As I often recall, it even makes me genuinely laugh when people would come to conferences specifically to see Sergey and negotiate with him to get unblocked. So, I want to ask you a few important questions and even start from afar, right on the very topic we're discussing now. Sergey has been with the project from the very beginning, since 2017, and really sits in the chats, talks to everyone, and started doing this not because someone specifically asked him to. You just started doing this on your own initiative. So tell me, why did you even get involved in this? What was it about Solar Group and Sovelmash that hooked you so much back then that you decided to take such an active role? Well, as they truly say, the stars aligned here for me. I came across some very compelling information about Dmitry Alexandrovich's groundbreaking technology. I meticulously looked into the company as thoroughly as I possibly could, based on all the readily available information online. I found it really interesting and genuinely promising, and then, quite fortuitously, on their website, I saw crucial information that the project was imminently about to launch. They had a kind of preliminary preview with some helpful links to YouTube, so I went to diligently look for more detailed information on YouTube and found it from some of the project's key informational partners at that particular time. It had something to do with electricity. I don't even remember the name of that channel anymore. That's how I learned everything about the project and started looking into the people I found out were on the Solar Group team. I became interested in who Sergey Semyonov was, why he would be the one raising money, and so on. That's also when I found out about the company Skyway. I was really intrigued by the whole story with Cymex at the time. I really dove in, looked into what projects had been on Cymex, what succeeded, what didn't, and why. I even remember reaching out to some of the people who had their projects on Cymex, and I realized that something serious and interesting was being set in motion. I was genuinely excited that it was just getting started. I understood, first of all, that Dmitry Alexandrovich had a cool technology, and secondly, that he had found guys who would really make this thing take off. I thought, okay, I need to get closer to this in any way I can and do everything possible to be involved because it really became interesting to me. And you decided to become part of the team, right? And as we can see now, a successful one. Now, about the haters, this is interesting because we were just talking about it, that there were a lot of haters, especially in the beginning. I remember they really became active, probably around 2019, and there was a time when some bloggers were writing things. Yes, it sounds funny now, of course, but they were saying, "What special economic zone? They won't be allowed anywhere. They won't build anything. They have no expertise. They have nothing." The most interesting thing is that now they've all disappeared somewhere. Well, there's really nothing more for them to say, but at the same time, for example, it didn't bother you, right? I mean, you heard what they were saying, but you believed that Solar Group wouldn't just survive, but would become an international platform and that Sovelmash would reach some logical conclusion. Where did you get that confidence from? Listen, working with information in general analytics, that was part of my job, part of my overall life experience. At one time, I even made a living from it. So I can easily find the information I need if it exists. If it's not on the internet, I know how and where to request the necessary documents, all quite openly and legally. So, as I said, when I got interested in this, I really did my homework, even spent money on certain requests. Because at that particular time, I was actually seriously considering investing a significant amount of money in this entire endeavor, actively supporting the project financially. I genuinely liked it. And of course, once I had that crucial information firmly in hand, some of the rather outlandish statements made by these so called persistent haters just seemed utterly laughable to me. They were quite interesting, and I always had the perfect opportunity to respond to them effectively, especially since I already possessed a clear and comprehensive amount of verifiable data about how things truly and accurately stood. Tell us more about yourself, and if you would, please elaborate on the company Solar Group. Son, 8 years have now passed, and currently you are not just an investor or a valued partner. Although that's also very important, indeed, you are recognized as one of the largest investors and certainly one of the most successful partners, but you also diligently worked in the support department. You, so to speak, quite unexpectedly took on that crucial role at the precise time when it was most urgently needed. Many of the dedicated employees who work here now, your valuable employees, you personally trained them and your guiding hand was definitely involved. You put in a significant amount of effort to make sure it worked successfully. Tell us, please, how exactly did you go through this remarkable journey and what specifically helped you perhaps to eventually become the esteemed head of the partner program? I always talk about this story that Solar Group is a very interesting entity. There are plenty of things you could criticize it for. You can always find something because the team is large and the work is very complex. And if the people who often criticize Solar Group knew even 20% of the difficulties the team has to deal with, they would definitely reconsider their views. Naturally, this has always interested me. I've lost track of the question. How did you manage to go from being an ordinary investor to becoming the head of the partner network? At one time, I actually joined those people who became our investors and criticized us. Yes, that's why I started talking about criticism, those who criticized us for multi-level marketing. These are the kinds of things that happen when finances and MLM don't add up. Many people believe and are convinced that these things simply cannot be used together in principle. However, if we carefully recall, for example, when we initially went out to the construction site, diligently dug the foundation pit, and then, quite unexpectedly, a global pandemic broke out across the entire world. Consequently, so many significant construction projects were unfortunately shut down, including even major enterprises with substantial government support, and numerous companies that were heavily indebted to prominent banks ultimately went bankrupt, and so on and so forth. But it was precisely thanks to the partners who brought in many new investors at that time. And I know these statistics. I know that many people abandoned the pandemic, the installment plans of old investors, because they were also affected, many lost their jobs, so there was indeed a serious downturn. But the investors became more active and somehow brought in a lot of new clients, and that's what allowed the project to stay afloat. This is a really large, serious team, and I myself only became a partner towards the end of 2018, I think, not earlier, and only then did I start getting seriously involved. For a long time, I didn't really understand how interesting this was and just how big a role partners play here. But then, of course, I got a taste for it too, and I significantly increased my investments precisely because you can earn money by promoting the projects. That's basically how I ended up here. Tell me, you think there's something that sets apart the people who work at Solar Group from those at other companies or projects? Because you often talk about the internal culture. What does it mean to you? How does it manifest itself for you? Of course, it's very different. As someone who personally tries to hire people, I've hired support staff and sometimes even specialized experts for the partner network. I know just how incredibly hard it actually is to successfully bring someone new into Solar Group. It's almost impossible, in fact, to attract a truly serious professional, someone who genuinely knows their specific field and is highly competent and exceptionally skilled, because such a person is usually very well educated and consequently very susceptible to the negative influence of various haters and detractors. They'll Google Solar Group and just walk away. So if we look at it from the other side, who are the ones who didn't leave? These are people with unconventional thinking, who have a different perspective, a different point of view, people who know how to work with information, and that's very important. And that's why, yes, this team is truly special and genuinely interesting. If it weren't for this dedicated team, the project simply wouldn't have happened at all. And today, what does Solar Group really mean to you personally? Why do you keep working here, continually promoting Solar Group? And what valuable insights would you say to those who are just now getting to know this remarkable company or joining as brand new, enthusiastic employees? Well, first of all, I want to see this whole thing through to the end. When I first learned about this project, I think we met when I was having conflicts with technical support. And so, starting this process, I really want things to be done properly for people in this community driven project. I want to see this through to the end. I want people to receive their shares and not regret supporting this awesome project. That's the first thing that really motivates me to make sure this whole story comes together and that people eventually look back and reconsider. I know that right now, many investors, I talk to you, and many criticize the work of Solar Group, but I'll say it again. If you knew even a fraction of the problems that arise here, you'd see things differently. And I really, truly like the fundamental idea itself. Back in those earlier days when I genuinely didn't yet know Sergey Semyonov or Pavel Filippov, when I never even truly thought I'd ever be investing my resources anywhere at all, I had completely and entirely different interests and priorities. I had my very own personal blog on mail.ru, and one particular day I wrote a truly interesting post there saying that if people in Russia, specifically the adult population, each chipped in just 1 single ruble a day, we could easily build a kindergarten, a hospital, or something else entirely new every single day. This could genuinely be done daily without having to coordinate with any officials or indeed anyone else at all. I remember this idea very, very well, and the most important thing is that 1 ruble a day is really an amount that absolutely won't affect our lives at all for almost everyone. So we can actually change the entire world without really sacrificing anything significant if someone effectively organizes our collective desire and sincere intention to make it possible in the most appropriate and right way. And this idea stayed in my mind. And it was precisely when, through Dmitry Alexandrovich's technology, I met Sergey Semyonov, Pavel Filippov, and this whole cheerful team that I realized this was exactly the place where this idea could be brought to life, that these guys wanted the very same thing. When I learned about the new generation airships project, I was honestly very surprised and amazed that the team kept moving exactly in the direction they had set out for. Knowing precisely what kinds of projects were generously offered to them, many of them commercially attractive, they thoughtfully turned those down for various reasons and instead chose a truly significant project that, one way or another, will profoundly change the world. Honestly, it's really quite cool that you, together with Sergey Semyonov, consistently take on projects that will genuinely change the world and most likely make life significantly better for many people. That's the most important thing, because there's also this conviction that money can be made in many different ways. Some people sell weapons, others do things that are really wrong, which we don't recommend and advise against. But some people try to organize processes in the world that give many others the opportunity to earn money and make this world a better place. What more could you wish for? So, Sergey, tell me, do all partners, in your opinion, share this view of Solar Group? And it would be interesting to hear about the foreign partners you work with. What are they saying? How do they feel about the new project? Has it become harder for them to work since they have to develop two projects at once? What feedback are you getting from them? Well, you know, Pasha, the less a partner earns, the more they tend to love Solar Group. In reality, both among foreigners and Russian partners, the more a partner starts to truly earn, the more complaints they have about the overall project, about the team, the more they want, the more they actively demand, and the more you have to work with them and try to find common ground and effective points of contact. And regarding the new project, how are things precisely now? What are people currently saying and discussing? When the new project was launched, there was some serious misunderstanding. Many people kept repeating, almost like a mantra, how could you start a new project without finishing the old one? Guys, what is this? And it had to be explained to many that you can't just keep relying on Sovelmash forever. And Sergey Semyonov, yes, for more than a year now, has been going to Dmitry Alexandrovich with the same question. Dmitry Alexandrovich, when are we closing the funding? Because, in fact, I know that Sergey Semyonov was actually ready to close the funding a couple of years ago. And in principle, there is a mathematical model that shows that if the installments were paid off more actively, the total amount of money coming in at once would have been greater. But Dmitry Alexandrovich, as an experienced manager, constantly explains to Sergey, as far as I know, that you can't take such risks. We have built an impressive enterprise, truly interesting, one that will really change a lot in the electric motor market, and as beautiful as it may sound, will help the planet's ecology, not burning so much coal and oil to generate the same amount of electricity. That's important. So now, just taking a risk, anything could happen in the world tomorrow, and people could suddenly stop paying their installments, right? And you've staked everything on that. You can also understand Dmitry Alexandrovich here. He truly cares deeply about the enterprise and doesn't want to risk the investments of the people who have entrusted him. So you can understand both Sergey and Dmitry Alexandrovich in this situation. But as Sergey Semyonov has said many times, the captain of the ship in this project is Dmitry Alexandrovich. Whatever he decides, that's how it will be. That's why we still haven't managed to close the financing. But as far as I understand, there's really almost nothing left to do here. Yes, basically, we already know the specific steps now. Today, both Sergey talked about them and Dmitry Alexandrovich mentioned them in the report, and he regularly discusses all this in his webinars, including about CCR. At the same time, we're saying now that CCR is very important, but you told me that it's not actually that important. Why is that? About 2 or 3 weeks ago, probably 3 weeks ago, Dmitry Alexandrovich shared on Expert Time that he had signed his first commercial contracts, and one of those contracts was actually 18 pages long. And almost the very next day after that, Expert Time, we got together with partners to talk, discuss advertising campaigns and other things, and we came to a general consensus that overall the CCR isn't really interesting. At that point, it hadn't even been received yet, and so in terms of operations, it was no longer of much interest to us. Right now, many investors and partners are really looking forward to, of course, the land buyout. That's a particularly interesting step, the one closest to transforming into a joint stock company. We understand that, yes, of course, it's great that we got the CCR and that it's necessary to put DETB into operation. There's no way around that. But since commercial activity is already underway, as Dmitry Alexandrovich hinted at some time ago, all of this has become secondary. Roughly speaking, we'll pop the champagne when Sovelmash buys out the land. Yes, as I understand it, there's no exact date yet, but we know it will happen soon. We're waiting, hoping that's how it will turn out. So, Sergey, look, right now we basically have a roadmap for AERONOVA. We understand how the company will develop and where it wants to go, and we know the final steps for Sovelmash. Tell me, how do you see these companies afterwards? I mean, you've invested in them. You're an investor. What do you expect from them? Well, at the moment, I don't see anything that could happen to prevent these companies from becoming unicorns. I really like Sergey Semyonov's idea of supporting those teams that are capable of creating a large and serious unicorn company. It's not just about a technology that will change the world for the better and improve the lives of many people, which is, of course, wonderful, but also about becoming a unicorn company so that the people who supported it financially will not regret it at all and will earn very well. Analyzing what is truly happening right now in the world with these asynchronous electric motors, no matter what anyone else says, I understand that Sovelmash is definitely a unique and remarkable unicorn. Of course, anything can potentially happen and things could indeed go wrong, but as of today, there is absolutely no data whatsoever to suggest that any significant failures are likely to occur. As for airships, here too we see that many industries, as it turns out, are working on airship projects. A company from Kuzbas that transports coal is requesting hundreds of millions of rubles from the government just to develop project documentation for airships they would like to use to deliver coal to their customers. Roscosmos dreams of transporting oversized cargo by airship, and plenty of other companies, including Gazprom, also dream of monitoring their networks with small airships. They calculated the economics and found that it's much more cost-effective than using drones and quadcopters. It's really better to do this with aerostats and airships. It's much cheaper and of higher quality. As it turns out, our government has documents and a strategy for the development and support of airship construction in Russia. So, Solar Group entered this field at just the right time. It's also very encouraging that there's a highly professional team here, people who have dedicated their entire lives to airships, including building and selling airships abroad, to France, for example, and we know they sold airships for an expedition in Israel and so on. I might be mixing up some details. In any case, everything is in place now to predict that this could become a unicorn company. Let's see what happens next. Yes, so that everything works out. By the way, we were talking today, and you mentioned that potential clients are now reaching out through you as well, right? Through our partners. So they want to develop airships in their own countries. I don't know if that's confidential information or not. No, it's not confidential. Investors from Vietnam who once gave great support to the Sovelmash project now want to open a company in Vietnam that will operate airships. Right now, they're working on a business plan, what it will be, and most likely, these will be advertising airships. They want to build a partnership specifically with AERONOVA to purchase these small airships for advertising purposes. That's great news. So now we already have buyers from outside of Russia. By the way, Vietnam is not the only country that is reaching out to AERONOVA, but I will not say more publicly right now because they are still in the process of signing agreements, so I do not know the details yet. I have the information, but I won't disclose it. If we're allowed to share, I think we'll talk about it in the next live streams. It's actually quite paradoxical. I remember that at the beginning, people kept asking Dmitry Alexandrovich, customers, name specific companies. And some thought that we simply didn't have any customers, which is why we weren't naming them. Now we see that there are already customers. Time has shown that even though the company technically isn't supposed to be operating yet, it's already working with customers. So the arguments that there were no customers where Sovelmash is, that was, of course, nonsense. But now, here at AERONOVA, I see a situation where they are coming, these negotiations are happening, partners have come into the office. In particular, when we were streaming from Gilles' place, I also said Gilles was lucky when he visited. He came out and there was a customer here who was talking with Fedor and another team, so they got acquainted as well. But we can't name them, right? And that's how it is. Now our investors are the most savvy and our partners are well informed. They'll run straight to Gilles Weber to personally ask who it was. By the way, maybe, but I don't know. I don't know if Gilles Weber fully understood because, oh, right, the interpreter. Yes, at first we were standing there without an interpreter, so at first he didn't understand, but then they explained it to him. Yes, they translated. Well, yes, you can ask. Gilles, if you're watching us, it's a secret. By the way, there will be translations, so yes, Gilles will hear us. Sergey, those are all the questions I wanted to ask you. Tell me, maybe you want to say something in closing or touch on some topic or maybe wish something. Honestly, I don't even truly know what I can genuinely wish for, especially considering the constantly changing legislation here in Russia, where it's absolutely not allowed to directly advertise investments and so on and so forth. But I do want to sincerely thank each and every person who actively supports these incredibly important projects, both the Sovelmash project and, of course, the AERONOVA project. And I want to emphatically state that in actual fact, this unwavering support is very, very important. This support is truly, profoundly important. If you truly believe in the same things that we do, thank you so very much, and please keep doing it. Please invite your acquaintances and friends here because thanks to this continued support, we will achieve our goals much faster. Agreed. Thank you very much, Sergey. Thank you for coming. And now, if you'll allow me, let me take a look at the chat and answer all of your questions as I promised. Sergey, thank you so very much. Thank you for inviting me. All right, we are back on air, thanks to the most dedicated individuals who stayed for the Q&A portion. You know, I sometimes complain that our webinars tend to run quite long, but I always make sure to say before the Q&A that there won't really be any more significant news here. If that's precisely what you came for, you are welcome to log off. But if you are genuinely interested in having your specific question answered or hearing the answer to your own particular question, then please feel free to stay. All right, let's move on to the questions. I asked for the questions to be collected from different platforms, since we're streaming both on vContact and YouTube right now. By the way, I want to say thank you. Today we had quite a high level of activity. Maybe that's because we had such an interesting lineup, including Dmitry Alexandrovich, even if it was in the form of a report. But still, he was here. Also, don't forget once again about likes and reposts. These are the things that will boost activity even more and accordingly help develop the projects we're working on together and promoting. So the very first question is, why precisely put it on the balance sheet and then subsequently proceed with the share issuance, thereby potentially exposing future investors to a rather hefty gift tax? What exactly is the underlying logic behind this particular arrangement? Well, look. Regarding whether it's truly a gift or not, we are currently diligently studying various viable options for effectively transferring shares to our valued investors. There really are quite many. Moreover, the relevant legislation here is constantly evolving and changing, so we are not officially announcing yet precisely how this will ultimately look or what the absolute best way to properly do it is, because once again, we've just very recently had significant new legislation on crowd investing appear, and many other things as well. In other words, our financial market in Russia is transforming, and that's a good thing. I think that now and in the near future, we will settle on an approach within the framework of the current legislation, and based on what we already have as of today, and we will announce the final scheme. As for why things are being done this way, why Solar Group first receives the shares and then the investors do, the answer is simple. Today, Solar Group is a co-founder of the company Sovelmash. Currently, Sovelmash is a limited liability company, LLC, but it will become a joint stock company during the reorganization process, as Sergey mentioned earlier today. We hope this will happen at the beginning of 2026. And according to the law, this stake will be transferred to Solar Group only in the form of shares. After that, Solar Group will then transfer these shares to the investor. And let me remind you that there is a special feature in your personal account by using which you can already submit certain information now that will speed up this process, so you won't have to collect it later. The next question is about the conference. Will we have a conference this year? This year, we will not have a large conference for investors in Russia. Today, all of our marketing efforts and everything else are focused on organizing the air show in Dubai, which Sergey Semyonov mentioned earlier today. This is truly a very important event. It is significant for AERONOVA because there, AERONOVA will not only be able to make a name for itself on the international stage, as Sergey said, but more importantly, it is an opportunity, a first confident step toward entering the international market. And that is exactly what AERONOVA will be doing there. Solar Group, for its part, will be doing as much PR as possible here because, without a doubt, this will also play a very positive role in attracting funding. So you could say that this is what we are currently focused on right now. But that doesn't mean there won't be a conference at all. Last time we actually discussed that once Sovelmash is fully completed and begins operations, it would be great to get together, maybe not for a traditional conference like before, but to actually hold it right inside the design bureau. I don't know if it will work out. We'll need to coordinate with Dmitry Duyunov, but it would be great, interesting, and new because people would like to visit inside, especially. And now that it's a functioning enterprise, maybe we'll do something like that when we complete those steps we talked about, which are extremely important for us right now to close the financing. What if Duyunov does not allow the internal exchange to be opened? What conditions must be met to open the internal exchange immediately? In my opinion, this is a hypothetical question. Why would Dmitry Alexandrovich Duyunov not allow the internal exchange to be opened? The internal exchange is, first and foremost, a matter of interaction between investors, so that investors can exchange shares, buy more shares, or exit the company by selling their shares without waiting for the company to go public. It is also a good marketing tool. I don't think Dmitry Alexandrovich Duyunov would be against it in any way. As for what needs to happen in order to open it immediately, technically it is possible to do so. In other words, as they say, you just turn it on, and it works. That's not the issue here. The main concern is more about legal matters. The most important thing is that at the moment when we decide to launch the internal exchange, there are no serious obstacles. Therefore, provided we have permission from Dmitry Alexandrovich Duyunov and from any relevant commissions that need to be considered, plus technical readiness, these are the factors that will most likely determine our decision. But I think all of this will be done, especially since we've talked about it many times. Another point is that we might do it differently somehow. That's also possible, and we discussed this during the webinar. Essentially, the issue isn't specifically about the internal exchange. It isn't needed by anyone. What's needed is the functionality for people to transfer their shares or stakes to each other. How should this be implemented? On a third-party platform, or should we do it ourselves? That's the second question. Is there an option for gifting or bequeathing? It's not possible to gift or transfer shares within the personal account. When shares become available, it will be possible to transfer and gift them. In light of the recent drone attacks on Russian oil refineries, are you considering proposing the use of airships with screens to protect these vital facilities? In general, the idea of using airships for military purposes is certainly quite interesting. There are many great and diverse variations. Airships have already been used multiple times in wars and have proven themselves well in a wide range of military tasks. but for now, to be honest, the team is not actively working in this specific direction. Not long ago, Fedor Konstantinov also commented on this question, saying that right now we are still focused on peaceful commercial orders, so to speak, not related to the military industry. Fortunately, there is demand for them at the moment. So for now, this issue is of course considered hypothetically, but at present we do not have any serious clients or work in these areas. So I'm investing a significant amount and I'm worried that the sale of shares isn't closing. Look, everyone is concerned about this, of course. Don't think that we're not worried about it, myself included, as well as Sergey Shevchenko, who was here today, and Sergey Semyonov. In fact, Sergey Semyonov mentioned that he regularly communicates with Dmitry Alexandrovich Duyunov, including about this very issue. And Dmitry Alexandrovich is extremely interested in this, as is everyone else, and they're doing everything possible to make it happen. But as for the timing, unfortunately, not everything depends on us. What we can say for sure right now is that we're moving in the right direction and everything is being done according to that direction. But of course, we might be off when it comes to the timing. And in particular, the CCR process took us, if I'm not mistaken, 10 or 11 months. This procedure took longer than expected. Some people might have thought it would take just a month, and I myself would have liked that to be the case. But in the report, Dmitry Alexandrovich specifically explained why it happened this way. There were many reasons. And perhaps this is where the real risk of participating in such projects lies, when not everything goes smoothly. On the one hand, it's interesting to watch because we often recalled how much happiness and euphoria there was when we overcame certain difficulties, and then looking back we thought, as they say, there were risks, but it was as if we didn't see them. We just went through them, and now everything is fine. But it's precisely participation in such projects that is compensated by the potential for profit, and this profit is higher than in traditional, let's say, investment avenues. That's why, as always, there is a balance here between risk and potential returns. Is there any clear understanding of exactly when the share issuance will actually take place? That is, which specific company will act as the designated depository, specifically which particular company it will ultimately be, and with whom Sovelmash will be closely cooperating in terms of thoroughly reorganizing all the related matters and associated processes? I honestly do not have that precise information yet. I know that the Sovelmash team is taking certain steps in this direction and of course is thinking about it. As for the timing, today Semyonov actually spoke about this, saying that today they discussed it with Dmitry Alexandrovich, and there is hope that it will happen at the beginning of 2026, in the first quarter. When is the end of Sovelmash's funding being considered? The acceptance of new funds? Is the funding really coming to an end? Yes, indeed, it's the finish line. As for the timeline, once again, we now clearly see and understand the roadmap to the completion of the project, and we regularly communicate it. One of the most important tasks, of course, is the CCR, commissioning, land buyout, and so on. All of this, which we've talked about today, as well as the reorganization at the beginning of 2026. Initially, according to the plan, our funding was supposed to end, as Dmitry Alexandrovich Duyunov mentioned, a year after receiving the CCR. So now we can say that this will probably be around the middle of next year. Again, I cannot provide you with a precise and specific date right now, but today we also thoroughly discussed that this significant issue is regularly and consistently raised between Sovelmash and SOLARGROUP. Will there indeed be an internal exchange? At this very moment, there are absolutely no plans whatsoever to abandon the internal exchange. Could SOLARGROUP develop a new and effective way to transfer shares to their investors without paying gift taxes? Once again, regarding the precise procedure for transferring shares from Sovelmash to all investors, various viable options are currently being carefully considered. Our legislation is continually changing. New tools and opportunities are constantly emerging, so right now we truly can't say for sure which specific method we will ultimately use to transfer these shares. But We will use the tool that is most relevant at the time of transfer, because when we first started actively addressing this issue, if I recall correctly, about 2 years ago, a lot has changed since then. The work we did 2 years ago is now in some ways not as relevant as it was back then. New tools and new opportunities have emerged. And if we do something now, but then in just 6 months a new tool appears, what's the real point? Why make promises so far in advance? That's why we'll make decisions in the moment, using the tools we currently have available. Is it truly possible to organize the production of airships under your franchise, for example, in Kazakhstan? There is potentially a huge demand. Yes, of course, it's possible. If you're interested in collaborating with AERONOVA in the development of the airship sector, you can get in touch with AERONOVA. AERONOVA has a website, aironova.pro. Go there. It's the company's official site. You'll find all the contact information, reach out, and basically, yes, this work can be done. By the way, we have actually had a valued client from Kazakhstan before. There was a company that specifically wanted to work in logistics over there. So if you are indeed from Kazakhstan, you certainly wouldn't be the very first. So I can't definitively say whether it would be truly possible to get some kind of exclusive franchise agreement, but let's definitely talk. Please do get in touch with us, and then we can look much more specifically at precisely what you are interested in. What percentage of the profit will Solar Group take for managing Sovelmash shares? Right now, we don't have any exact fixed fee. Generally, there are commissions for the management itself and a commission on the profit, so to speak, that is earned. Typically, funds charge fees in these two areas. Most likely, we won't be any different in this regard. Usually, the commissions are small. You can see for yourself on the Moscow exchange, for example, various funds and trust management services. And yes, of course, there may be other specifics there, like different shares of various companies being managed at once, but you'll see just the market, so to speak, prices for such services. At Solar Group, you have shown that you can handle two projects at once. Sovelmash is finishing up its development phase, so what will be the next project besides the airships? And will you be using blockchain for fundraising efforts? Thank you. Thank you very much. Yes, time has already shown that we are capable of managing two projects. In fact, I think many people have held this opinion for quite some time now. As for the new project, last time, I don't remember exactly where, but I think it was at some meeting, a public meeting online somewhere. Sergey Semyonov said that for now, no, it's definitely too early to take on a new project. By the way, as they say, it would be good to sort things out. Everything is so active and dynamic, and there's a lot to do. You can't say that the next generation airships project has reached a point where you can leave it and it will keep going. There is a lot of work, including right now a very important step in the international direction, the fact that Dubai, the exhibition, is a strategic move. And honestly, I'm even surprised that after just a year of the company's operation, this is already being done so ambitiously. But at the same time, I think everything will work out because I know who Sergey will be talking to. I know the level of the people he'll be meeting with. The current level of development there is such that Sovelmash truly has a chance to enter the international market, as they say, almost at the snap of a finger. So there's no new project expected at this moment. As for blockchains in the context of fundraising, that topic is not currently on the agenda, but we have indeed discussed it in the past. Here, we shouldn't focus on blockchain itself. Blockchain is first and foremost a technology, and what we need to think about more is how to attract investments legally from the perspective of various laws. And blockchain doesn't solve that problem. It's probably more of a tool for some kind of security or investor confidence. So if we do use it, it would be more of a secondary step. Right now, the initial and most important step is that the dedicated Solar Group team is closely studying how the global investment market is continually changing. In many markets, so to speak, significant new legislation is steadily emerging that either allows for new and innovative ways to attract investments or genuinely helps make what we currently do more effective, including specifically in Russia. So this is precisely where our primary efforts are currently focused. What exactly does managing Solar Group shares truly involve? Well, first of all, it's about receiving and transferring dividends to you. This is especially relevant for investors outside of Russia, because if you're from Russia, you have a bank account in Russia, you bought shares, you receive dividends, there are no problems. A foreign investor may encounter technical difficulties, especially if they truly do not want to deal with all of that. Secondly, the crucial fact is that these shares are on the balance sheet of the company Solar Group. Legally, you are the owner and you have a contract with Solar Group, so you own these securities indirectly through an intermediary. And accordingly, Solar Group can do something with these securities at your request, transfer them to someone, sell them, or hand them over to you. That essentially is the whole point of the management process. When will Sovelmash shares be available? I'll repeat once again, we all hope this will happen at the beginning of 2026, in the first quarter, which means there are just a few months left until the reorganization of the Sovelmash company. Does this mean you can invest until the first quarter of 2026? As we discussed again today, no, most likely the funding will continue for longer, if, again, we proceed from the original information. Regarding the significant fact that our funding would indeed continue for a full year after the CCR, yes, but as you can quite understand, things can change quite quickly here. This crucial information was from before the CCR was successfully obtained. Now we can plainly see that events are unfolding much more actively and dynamically than I think even the most confident investors and partners had originally expected. We already clearly see that Sovelmash is diligently fulfilling its very first commercial orders, so I firmly believe that the funding could potentially be closed even much earlier than anticipated. A lot here will depend significantly on the current state of affairs at Sovelmash, of course, and also on precisely when Sergey Semyonov and Dmitry Alexandrovich Duyunov come to a mutual agreement about this particular matter. Because the issue is indeed very important, it's a truly strategic matter, and it would be utterly unwise, as they often say, to stumble at the very last crucial step just because in total there wasn't quite enough, say, a mere $1 million, for essential working capital, for purchasing some vital machine or necessary materials needed for ongoing operations. Therefore, what I can say for sure, what I can guarantee, so to speak, is that this issue is on the agenda and is discussed regularly, and everyone is extremely interested in it. Moreover, Solar Group, there's this opinion I've heard that Solar Group supposedly doesn't need this at all, that Solar Group is doing great, investments are coming in, so what's the problem? Well, in reality, it's not all that great, actually. Of course, prolonged financing isn't a positive aspect for anyone, including Sovelmash itself. Dmitry Alexandrovich understands this perfectly well and would gladly close the financing if, at that precise moment, he was absolutely sure that the investments were entirely sufficient for everything that was meticulously planned within the Sovelmash project. If we talk specifically about Solar Group, then for Solar Group, as people say nowadays, this is a very strong case, a significant reputational advantage for moving forward, and we are all confident in that. And we all perfectly understand that with the successful implementation of the Sovelmash project, the dirigibles projects, well, most likely the fundraising there will increase, maybe 2 or 3 times over just a few months, because all those people who are currently watching the project, especially those who invested in the Sovelmash project, they will immediately go to dirigibles, because yes, a fully completed project is an excellent case. That's why successful implementation of the Sovelmash project is not a secondary task for Solar Group. Today, it is Solar Group's #1 priority. Solar Group is doing what depends specifically on it. It's part of the work. That's essentially what we're doing, including by holding this broadcast. Now, regarding the initial plans for an internal exchange, are they now unlikely? You mentioned that authorities do not welcome such an initiative. Well, look, what we said was not that authorities don't welcome it, but that authorities naturally do not welcome anything illegal or prohibited or anything like that, of course. So yes, here we need to look at how to make it legal and permitted, that's all. So for us, the only question is how to do it within those boundaries. In any case, even when it comes to the internal exchange, what we know for sure right now is that investors can transfer shares to each other. This is a clear and established procedure in Russia today. And much of it is done using various electronic means, so you don't even have to spend a lot of time or effort. You can exchange or sell shares this way as well. This addresses the question of the liquidity of the assets that investors are acquiring today. So the internal exchange is actually secondary here, because you can very quickly organize a transaction if you have the shares firmly in hand. You can readily sell them, gift them, or do whatever you truly want with them quite quickly, all within the current established legal framework. Therefore, you definitely don't need to worry at all about ending up with some securities or assets that you don't know how to sell or precisely what to do with them. This simply will not happen. Will we have to wait long for the commissioning permit? I saw in the chat it could take 180 days, or did I misunderstand? Well, yes, Dmitry Alexandrovich mentioned this in a report as well. Usually, whenever there's some kind of bureaucratic procedure, it invariably has a certain specific deadline that must be met, and that deadline, as a rule, is very long. From the perspective of government agencies, it's easier for them to just say, we'll issue a document within, say, a year, and that's that, accordingly. If they issue it to you in 7 months, great, no rules broken. If you get luckier or manage to arrange for the commission to come sooner, by bothering someone, calling someone, making a request, you might get it in 2 months. So for some it's faster, for others slower. But in reality, they usually state the maximum possible time frames, right? So considering that Sovelmash is now one of the few companies, and as we also mentioned today, after them, no one else has been able to get a COSI in Technopolis. And plus, based on the information we have, including from the webinars with Dmitry Alexandrovich Duyunov, we understand that Sovelmash is truly held in high regard, and the undeniable fact that Sovelmash is indeed getting very special attention right now, partly because the exceptional level of the enterprise, its ambitious goals, and the team's high competence are also remarkably high, that I am quite sure they absolutely won't be allowed to drag their feet at all. I don't see any reason why we would have to wait for too long. So that's why I think it will happen quickly, but then again, of course, this doesn't depend on me, so I can't give you a specific time frame right now. After all, I'm not the one who issues commissioning permits. And are they even truly necessary? That's precisely what someone is asking. Well, to be completely honest, the fundamental question is to fully and comprehensively answer that particular question, I would certainly need at least, I think, a good half an hour, because 30 to, say, 60 minutes, right, is what we usually spend on the entire presentation for that specific project. So you'd be much better off coming to the presentation, and there we can explain to you in much greater detail whether airships are truly necessary. But I can tell you this one thing. Believe me, if airships weren't genuinely needed, Solar Group definitely wouldn't have gotten involved with them at all. And out of the, say, 300 to 500 projects that were carefully filtered out over many, many years, they certainly wouldn't have chosen airships, right? No? That alone should clearly tell you that, well, there must be something quite significant to it if they specifically chose this particular project. As for the important question of when it will actually be ready, well, it's more a question of when it was already considered ready, right? We definitely need to rephrase that, primarily because AERONOVA explicitly stated that the first aircraft would fly within a single year, and they over-delivered on that promise twofold, because it's October now, and the team started working in their office in October of last year, and now 2 aircraft already exist. First, there's the new Do-1, which, by the way, a great number of investors have seen because they came and watched how, this aircraft flew. And of course, there's the Aerolet, a new aircraft that was developed by the AERONOVA company. Dmitry Sergeyevich Kamel, yes, is the designer of this aircraft. You can see him in the video right now, and you can see it has such an unusual shape, meaning it's certainly not a classic one in any way, shape, or form. And Airships can come in different shapes. We've talked about this before. They can be very different, and each shape has its own, advantages and maybe even some disadvantages. So AERONOVA will be working on different aircraft. Yes, because different aircraft are for different tasks and for different potential clients. What will happen if the shares bought in the final stages are more expensive than after the valuation of the entire enterprise? Who will be held responsible for that? And when will you launch the internal exchange? Well, look, regarding the internal exchange, after the financing is completed, and by completion of financing, we mean stopping the sale of new shares, the internal exchange is scheduled to be launched as for the enterprise valuation. When the project was being carefully calculated, yes, including when the overall cost of the project was increased. Yes, and precisely how much money is truly needed for its successful implementation. It was repeatedly mentioned what specific property would be contributed to the company's balance sheet and what particular property can be accurately valued during its capitalization. And Dmitry Alexandrovich Duyunov has repeatedly and consistently said that the innovative enterprise we are carefully creating, considering all the extensive developments, the comprehensive documentation, the numerous patents, and absolutely everything else more than adequately covers the substantial financing that this significant project genuinely receives. We have created an excellent enterprise, a highly profitable business, and therefore the investments that have been made will definitely pay off here. Even from the perspective of just the real estate, right? We've also talked about this, that the real estate, yes, so large, with such a truly large area, so incredibly well built, especially in such an interesting and advantageous location with a huge number of significant benefits in the form of tax breaks and more, that alone is truly worth a lot. If we're talking about it as just an asset valuation, right? What we currently have. But I won't even get into the equipment, everything else, the patents, the developments, you already know all that. So there's no doubt about it. And by the way, we'll actually find out about this soon. So it's not some long-term story. I mean, in principle, the enterprise valuation is something that is supposed to happen, and it's something that will happen in the near future. Can we still buy a package in the airships with dividends from Sovelmash, and then you won't have to look for new investors? I agree. Our investors, yes, generally have like two distinct opinions. Yes, regarding the new project, and I am specifically referring to the dedicated Sovelmash investors. Well, the first and most enthusiastic one is, wow, this is absolutely great. I will definitely invest and secure the very best terms available. I truly like this opportunity. And others say, as soon as Sovelmash makes a profit, as soon as I get dividends, then I'll invest, but not for now. Both positions are fair. At the same time, Sergey Semyonov said that a significant number of investors from our established old audience are now investing in the new project. So many still believe in what we're doing and are ready to go further until the project is successfully finished. Both investment strategies are good. The second strategy is generally safer when you invest the profit from the first project directly into the second one. Tokapos. Yes, of course, you won't be able to invest in the airship project on the same favorable terms that are available today, but on the other hand, the risks are lower. I always say that every investor should take on the risks that suit them. You can always take risks or not take risks. It all depends, as they often say nowadays, on your individual investment profile, your personal readiness to engage, and your overall tolerance for financial risk. Can I transfer or give part of my shares to my relatives now or on the internal exchange without waiting for the corporatization? Because after corporatization, everything will have to be notarized, and that will take a long time. Well, look, you can't transfer them now. As for when there will be shares available, I don't know why you are suggesting it will take a long time. I'll reiterate this point again. Modern tools now allow many operations to be carried out automatically, quickly, and conveniently, so I don't think you will encounter any difficulties here. Are there investors not only from developing countries but also from developed ones, and in what percentage ratio? I cannot give you the exact percentage ratio right now. I just do not have those specific statistics readily available in front of me. But as for whether there are any, yes, indeed there are, for sure. Indeed, many developed countries, including European countries, are actively investing in the project and are in the very top 10. I remember quite clearly for sure that Bulgaria, for instance, and Germany were definitely among the top participants. You know how it is? In terms of the number of investors, there are far fewer of them, but in terms of the amount of money, not so much less. Because investors from developing countries often invest small amounts. And for example, in some countries, we even have very small experimental packages and so on. But if we talk about the European market, people there don't really get that. There, if people invest, well, for them, an investment is immediately tens of thousands of euros or dollars as a rule. So they invest more, the work with them is different, more targeted, but yes, they certainly exist. Tell me, how many Sovelmash shares have been sold and how many are left in installments? At the present moment, I'm speaking purely from memory. I think about 63 billion units have been sold, and there are approximately 1.5 billion, maybe a little bit more, in installments. Those are the approximate figures right now currently. Permission for commissioning is also, that question has already been asked. How much will Sovelmash hypothetically be worth after the valuation and commissioning are complete? Well, look, as Dmitry Alexandrovich Duyunov says, the minimum will be the amount of money that was invested. As for what the final valuation will be, well, of course, that's something we all have yet to find out. I mean, we could just take a guess, but that probably wouldn't be very accurate. And in my opinion, to be honest, this is, of course, a rather delicate point. Yes, of course, we'd like it to immediately be worth 10 times more than the money invested, and many people think that's, well, a given. But for me personally, and I think for those investors who entered the project with a long-term perspective, this should be less of a concern, because what's important isn't how much the company will be worth at a specific moment, but how much it will be worth after 10, 20 years of operation. And if you had indeed invested in the project, patiently waited several years, the enterprise then launched, and then you subsequently sold your shares, I honestly and truly do not understand why you would ever do that at all. I mean, you can certainly do that, no problem at all. Maybe I'll even consider buying them from you myself, but it's obvious, isn't it? If the enterprise has already started working, if it has started making money, if you see that the enterprise has orders coming in to sell a part of an active functioning business, well, unless you desperately need the money, I just don't understand why you would do that. And especially since we see so many examples in the world of people who sold a company at the very beginning of its existence and commercial activity, only to find out later that the company is worth billions of dollars, and then those people were very upset. So I, for one, am not going to sell. That's why this interests me to a lesser extent, so to speak. What will happen if the shares that are bought at the last... Wait, that was already asked too. What will be the conversion rate of investment shares into company stock? 1 to 5, 1 to 10. Again, it's not that critically important, because once again, it truly doesn't matter how many individual shares you actually have. Whether you have 10 shares at $1 each or just one single share for $10, in total, your entire stock package is worth precisely the same amount of money. So the conversion rate in this case is not as important as the final capitalization. Yes, accordingly, that's exactly what our attention is focused on now. What the total capitalization of the company will be, then it will be clear how much your package of investment shares or your package of stock is worth. So, to answer this question very specifically, and not to speculate on it now, we should, of course, wait for the official valuation, which in principle, well, should happen very soon. Why? You're asking to split the shares, how many to leave under management and how many to manage on your own. What's this about? Look, we are not asking you to split the shares. We are not asking you to leave some shares under Solar Group's management and take some for yourself. This mechanism was created in response to a request from our investors, mainly from those outside of Russia. Many investors from outside Russia, especially those who invested small amounts, $50, $100, live in Africa. And they have a very reasonable question: how exactly will I acquire the shares of a Russian enterprise? And if I truly want to get them, and I'm even quite willing to go through all the trouble and complete all the necessary procedures, how much will it ultimately cost me? And won't it turn out that I invested $10, right? But I need to spend $30 to register my shares in my name. And indeed, in some cases, it can be simply unreasonable, time-consuming, expensive, and people don't want to deal with it. And they themselves, you could say, asked for or suggested some kind of tool so that they could leave their securities within Solar Group, and so that Solar Group would then settle accounts with such investors. That's why this trust management was devised. It's not mandatory. And if you're an investor from Russia, and I take it you are, since you're asking this on the Russian broadcast, then register the shares in your own name as your property, own them, and then in principle, you could say you don't need this if it's causing you concern. Will Sovelmash buy back shares in the future? I'll say right away that no such commitments were ever made. That is, neither Solar Group nor Sovelmash ever guaranteed that they would engage in buying back their own shares. Although today it's a fairly straightforward and quite popular financial procedure, it's commonly called a stock buyback, and these significant buybacks are now being done by, probably almost all companies, because thanks to them, the stock price invariably goes up. And of course, the management, the business owners, they really, really like that. So consequently, profits are often directed towards it. I think that if Sovelmash has surplus funds, then of course Sovelmash will be able to do this because, well, of course, buying back your own shares is something that's done with, well, probably with super profits, right? It's when you've already used profits to buy new equipment, meaning you've reinvested some money and you've paid dividends to investors. And then you think, well, I might as well buy back some shares too. Although, by the way, some companies do both intentionally. Here's another very interesting thing from the world of finance. Everyone in the chats asks, when will Sovelmash pay dividends? Well, in fact, paying dividends is about the same as a buyback, because let's say you have shares worth $100 and you were paid dividends of $10, your profit is $10, right? But they could have just done a buyback and your shares would have started to be worth not $100 but $110. So your profit would be exactly the same. But I'm saying this in general because we, of course, are constantly talking about some standard tools. Again, the internal exchange, dividends, it's all clear. But in the modern financial world, there are many more opportunities that other companies use, and I think that Sovelmash will use them as well. Why is AERONOV moving to another office? This office, where we are right now, by the way, was rented a year ago. And it's not the smallest, it's 750 square meters right now. But despite being so large, it has become too small over the year, so there's simply not enough space. New employees are being hired, and that's it. The office has reached its limit. And as you understand, in order to truly build airships, in order to create and effectively recreate, you could say, the airship industry worldwide, you certainly need a lot of dedicated employees. You need a lot of skilled designers. You need a lot of experienced engineers. And they, of course, need appropriate workplaces. That's the very essence of the profession, right? Some people, of course, do work remotely. And you shouldn't think that people only ever work in the office, right? Here, so to speak, people haven't fit in the office for a long time. Some are working remotely. But there are some professions where, well, you can't work from home. You need special equipment and many other things. So there's simply not enough available space. That new office is significantly bigger. And as far as I currently know, it's not more expensive in terms of monetary cost if you carefully take it per square meter, but it's just considerably bigger, right? And there will be, again, more dedicated workplaces. So that's the primary and only reason. It's conveniently located a 15-minute drive from the current existing office. Many of our valued investors have been here in this very office, so they can roughly and easily imagine precisely where it is and exactly how long it takes to get to the new one. Okay, another option is to buy back share packages from those who abandoned their package payments or didn't have the opportunity in the early stages. I see. You're asking. Yes, indeed. Look, today I talked about the shares that are fully paid for, that are currently in installment plans within the Duyunov's Motors project. But there are also those specific shares that people initially reserved at one time as installment plans, but they ultimately didn't finish paying for them completely. So these particular shares are now considered abandoned. And in the airships project, we were actively reselling these very shares, right? People were happy to buy them because, well, someone bought shares at the zero stage, right? We had one of those. And they stopped paying for them and people bought them out, for example, in September, right? We had a special promotional opportunity like that. And many people are asking, maybe we should do the same in the Sovelmash project. Well, in principle, it's an interesting idea. We've actually discussed it. So in principle, we can consider it, we can discuss it with the marketing department. It's quite likely that something like that will happen. It's just that in general, if we're talking, you've seen that in the last few months, we've had quite a big promotional offer, which related to both AERONOVA and Sovelmash. And now we've kind of thought that, well, there's been a lot of it already. People are tired of it. And in principle, if there's some kind of, as they say, freebie available, it's usually not done for no reason. Yes, it's done to meet the needs of the projects. And there was such a need, which Sergey Semyonov talked about, including when he was speaking, yes, and explaining why these promotions are held in the first place. So if there is such a need, if it becomes clear that Sovelmash is falling short on the necessary funding somewhere, yes, it's a good idea as an option to run some kind of promotion to sell these shares that are left, that were abandoned by people in the in the Sovelmash project, so as not to create new shares as part of the same various promotions. If you're interested in this, friends, if you'd like to buy out the abandoned shares that other investors didn't pay off in installments in the Sovelmash project, write about it so that it's clear whether there's such a demand, whether there's such an interest in such offers. Would you like to profitably add to, so to speak, your investments in this project? Okay, well, friends, it seems the questions have run out. Well, in any case, I see I've, as they say, been talking too much. Yes, the broadcast has been going on for more than 2 hours. Some people complain that our broadcasts are too long, so let's wrap it up here. Thank you very much if you've watched until the end. And in that case, I'm sure you won't mind taking a moment right now to like this broadcast, repost it, and send it to a friend to watch, because a recording of the broadcast will be available at these very same links. They can watch it later, and that will also be useful for all of us. Once again, I'd like to draw your attention to the fact that a series of very important events will take place before the end of the year. We are very much looking forward to the commissioning of Sovelmash, but we can't give an exact date for that yet, and we are waiting for the first, perhaps, public contracts with customers at AERONOVA. Most importantly, of course, is entering the international market. Yes, if we're talking about the air show in Dubai, I think it will be very interesting to watch. I'd like to note that from Dubai, on November 23rd, I hope nothing changes for us. We will have another webinar from Solar Group, where we will also invite Fyodor Konstantinov, and where there will be engineers from AERONOVA who will tell you how. Besides that, regarding important events, if we're talking about financing, remember that our investment conditions will change in both of our projects in the very near future. As early as November, in the Sovelmash project, there will be a discount reduction. This means that the conditions available today for investing will no longer be offered, and the discount will be reduced quite radically, even though our stage is still the final one, so there won't be a stage change. So please pay close attention to that particular point. A significant transition to a new investment stage is also planned in the airships project. It's great that the project is continuing to go according to plan, both in terms of the stage timelines and the amounts we are raising. It's good when everything goes according to plan. So I congratulate you on that if you've already become a valued investor. But if not, don't miss out on this incredible opportunity. Thank you very much indeed, my friends, and we'll see you all very soon. Slava.
Bottom